Helen Shield on ABC Radio Hobart and ABC Northern Tasmania.
Joseph Marshall's the chief record producer at Silbert Records, which has the motto, bringing your childhood back one release at a time. Hello, Joseph.
How are you going?
Hey, well, thank you. What was Problem Creek?
It was a really bizarre sort of ABC educational schools program, which was produced in 88, I believe, and they last repeated it in 95, which is ironic because I was born 98. I didn't have the chance to see it, but I discovered it through this, Silbert Records business thing I've been doing, and I thought this music is quality. It's a quality program.
How did you come across the recordings from it?
Well, I in my research of other shows like Johnson and Friends and that, I'd seen the show around, had a look, and then I reached out to the composers and sort of got in touch with them. I was looking for music from another show that they worked on called Swap Shop, which I'd picked up the rights to. So it was just sort of, discovering it through other shows, I guess.
Right. And how did you start on the Silbert Records road?
Okay, so, I've had a long time obsession with the 90s kids show Johnson and Friends, another Australian-produced show, in fact, written by a Tasmanian-born writer, John Patterson.
Is that the one where there are people in giant, hot water bottle suits and things?
Yes, that's the one.
All right.
That's the one. And I was in touch with Chris Neal, who wrote the music for that. He's been a long-time friend, mentor, and then I think one day he just turned around and said, Joseph, you have my blessing to do whatever with these recordings. And I started the record label for Johnson and Friends and another show called Liftoff.
And Liftoff as well. Okay, people go a little crazy about EC when you start talking about Liftoff.
Yes. Yeah, that was another one. Liftoff had like 30 composers on it, but Chris Neal was the sort of the boss on that one as well. So Johnson and Liftoff are very closely sort of intertwined. A lot of people don't know that.
What do you do with the music as Silbert Records?
Well, my goal is to recirculate it, to get it out there again, legally, of course. But a lot of it is on old tape formats, and a lot of companies don't, care to digitize that stuff. So I'm the one who undertakes all that, and I've got a couple of other colleagues in Canberra and stuff who undertake really heavy tape digitizing stuff. And basically, the goal is to make it sound like it, from a technological standpoint, it will work today, and then get it out there so people can hear it again. And there's been quite a lot of interest, surprisingly. Have you
found yourself in your studio with a Chinograph pencil and a Stanley knife dealing with reel-to-reel editing?
No, I haven't gotten to that yet. In fact, the very first reel-to-reel master we've used, because a lot of the stuff's come from digital tape, is the Problem Creek soundtrack. And that was brilliantly transferred by Stuart Long, who was one of the co-composers.
Right. What have you got your hands on from Noddy?
Noddy? Quite a lot of stuff, actually. Well, there's the original 1970s Cosgrove Hall adaptation, and I've gotten that music, as well as the spin-off records they did. And then there's the 90s one, which everybody's familiar with. That was also made by Cosgrove Hall, composed by Paul K. Joyce, who also wrote the Bob the Builder theme song. And that album has just come out like a day ago, which was exciting. And there's also the US PBS version of Noddy, which the songs are more like Broadway styled numbers, and those are great as well. So,
I'm going to have to listen to that because I can't quite conjure in my mind what Noddy sounds like on Broadway.
Oh, yeah, exactly. It's bizarre until you hear it.
I hope there's a love theme for Big Ears in the Broadway show.
That's the missed opportunity, I'm afraid.
Right there. So what's the hardest part for you? This is Joseph Marshall. He's the chief record producer with Silbert Records, with the motto, bringing your childhood back one release at a time. What's the toughest part of getting the rights to these old children's show themes?
Well, I find getting the rights isn't the hard part. It's when the bloody companies decide to throw out the master tapes, and then I've got to compile it together from, I don't know, an old recording somewhere. And it has to be, I'm very OCD about it. It has to be done right, or I'm just not happy with it.
Right. This isn't going to sound like you've taped it off YouTube and bunged it on your site.
Exactly. And the point is, half the stuff that people sling up on YouTube, I've probably transferred myself. They've probably come from my collection.
When will Problem Creek go live?
That's looking like the end of the week, I suspect. It's interesting because there was an album that came out in '89. It was a cassette exclusive, and turns out the album that I've put together from the material Stuart found, it actually has about 5 extra tracks. So I feel that's that's a bit of an accomplishment. Sort of deluxe version. Yeah.
Absolutely. Is there one show which would be your dream childhood TV show to get the rights to the music from?
Oh God, yeah, Thomas the Tank. I'd love to get the music rights to Thomas the Tank because that would, I know for a fact that would be a big seller, but that music is iconic, and it was the sound of my childhood growing up.
What do you feel when those first notes of Thomas the Tank Engine kick in?
It was like a weird sort of primal sense of nostalgia. It takes me back to when I was, a little kid.
Right, it gets you in the guts, doesn't it?
It does. It sure does.
Oh, I love it. Well, thank you very much. Massive efforts underway to bring your childhood back, one release at a time from Silbert Records. That's Joseph Marshall. He's the chief record producer there. You can find Silbert Records, Silbert, on social media or on Spotify, and in the next few minutes on your afternoon on ABC Radio Hobart and ABC Northern Tasmania. Meet 2 of the Tasmanians who are responsible for bringing Problem Creek to life in the first place.
Come you meet the old friends who live in Problem Creek.
Lyall McDermott was the Problem Creek composer, and the series producer was John Honey. Hello to you both.
Hello, Helen. Afternoon.
Lyle, how are you enjoying hearing that on the radio?
Look, it's a delight. Absolute delight. When Stewie Long, who, wrote the music, we wrote the music together, when he sent the files through that ended up with Joseph, we had a quick listen at home. It was just amazing. Just fell about the place laughing. Couldn't remember writing a lot of the stuff. Well, it's a good tune. I'm not bad at this, I thought to myself. It was great. Yeah.
John, what do you picture when you think about that show?
I picture a very busy time, Alan. It was quite a different era. There was a lot of production happening locally, and particularly in educational television, it was an interesting time because there were educational television, ABC production units in every state, contributing to the national grid. So everything we did locally here went Australia-wide for over a period of years in terms of repeats as well. So, it was pretty intensive because all these programs related specifically to parts of the curriculum. And in the case of Problem Creek, they were maths for grades 1 and 2 kids. And the year before Problem Creek was done, we did another one called Channel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which was presented as segments of a 20-minute program that were like a sort of squashed-up version of an evening's television viewing. So there was a science fiction series, there was a game show, there was a news broadcast, and so on. And all of these things were used to get mathematical concepts across, but in an open-ended kind of way, so that we weren't doing a Sesame Street and teaching stuff. We were setting up things that kids could come back to afterwards and solve, Hence the title Problem Creek.
Right. Is that why I remember Hunter and Computer Cat, because they were pitched a little older?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Yes. I wrote the Hunter series.
Thank you for that.
Well, not entirely all of it, but most of it. And that's astounding in terms of the way that's sort of carried on in people's recollection. It's a fantastic thing. But in terms of us kind of getting together, I was the executive producer and a director and a writer on the series, and I actually wrote all the song lyrics. And I needed someone to work with, and I'd just come back into the ABC after having been doing a lot of other things. And I asked one of the producers who'd been working to give me a hint about who to get in touch with to set these songs. And that's how we got together with Lyall and Stewie. And what we did was to decide what style each of those songs was going to be musically. And then I would go away and address the problem that we were trying to sort of expose and set up. and write the lyrics and toss them over to these guys, and then they did the rest.
And Lyall, what were you up to in your music career at that point?
I was a teacher, a music teacher in high schools, pretty much. By that stage, I might have been, I would probably have been a specialist instrumental teacher, a woodwind teacher. So I was working in primaries and secondaries, and I hadn't started. No, I was about to join the Dorn Valley Concert Band within a couple of years as a player. So we're getting kind of in that direction, and the composition thing was all fairly new. Stu and I had met up through Fern Chutney, which is a Hobart institution as a band.
John Coleman, very fine pair of overalls, playing in the Doghouse.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Doghouse for several years. And Peter Hasenkamp was part of that, and I noticed his name's on the credits for Problem Creek. So, there's a lot of, being Hobart, there's a lot of interconnection there,
Yeah. This is Lyall McDermott and John Honey, both of whom were part of creating Problem Creek, this TV show aimed at Year 1 and 2 students, made in Tasmania. Your afternoon on ABC Radio Hobart and ABC Northern Tasmania. I wonder if you can solve a question which came up in my office today, John Honey. In the theme sequence, is that the same bicycle from Hunter?
No, it's not. It was one that was done specially for Posty.
A colleague of mine was convinced that's Hunter's bicycle. They've taken Hunter's bike.
No, well, look, having said that, I think, maybe I'm wrong. But I'm pretty sure that we designed that from the ground up, particularly for Mary McMenamin to write.
There really was a budget at the ABC back then.
Oh, yeah, there was. Yes. Modest. We always had to find ways of cutting corners and getting around to do the things we wanted to do for the amount of money we didn't have.
Were there any children's TV shows made in that era without puppets?
Yes. Fatty and George was made without puppets. That was earlier.
That's a very good point.
Yeah. But I think the reason we had the puppets in this one was that when I was at the Film Corporation some years before that, we had done a couple of pretty heavy-duty puppet programs, and they were still lying around. The puppets were still lying around, and I believe I scrounged those.
And I noticed Bruce Patterson's name on the list of actors here,
yeah.
And I think maybe that set him off, but I have a feeling he ended up at Terrapin as a puppeteer and maker of very fine puppets.
Right.
Yes, there was some good stuff.
Yeah.
Problem Creek. Has this inspired you to dig into the back catalogue any further now that this one's come up and to pull out some of the old Tasmanian-made children production work?
Well, the question is whether it still exists in any way. You see, there on YouTube at the moment, there are 2 episodes of Problem Creek. Mm-hmm. The program I mentioned, Channel 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which came out the year before, nothing. There's no evidence of its existence at all. So that's the difficulty. But some of the stuff that we did at the Film Corporation, for example, like Fatty and George, and like the Willow Bend mystery, are available on the State Archives of Tasmania website. You can get them, and of course, Brian E. Kidd has done a tremendous amount of work in reviving interest in Fatty and George. But there was a lot of other stuff as well around. Everything that the Film Corporation did in its 6 years of existence is still available through the State Archives. But unfortunately, a huge amount of stuff that we did for ABC educational television in my tenure between 1974 and then with a gap in the middle coming back in the late 80s, doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, that's such a loss.
It is really sad, yeah, because there was some good stuff done.
Yeah.
I mean, like The Colonials, for example, is probably the most famous of all of them, which is a series that I was involved in making as executive producer and co-director and co-writer in the late 70s, which was seen by every kid growing up in Australia from the time it went to air in 1977 until the early 1990s. No longer, you can't find it anymore, because the ABC didn't keep it. Sorry, ABC, but
No, well,
it's bad.
I think we should be the ones apologising to you. And Lyall, you did mention that was just before your era where you joined the Derwent Valley Concert Band. You're chief conductor these days. Will you be back touring the world again soon?
It's in the plan. It's a matter of picking a time and finding the places to go. I mean, there's a couple of things we're looking, and we still have some very close contacts with people and bands overseas. We're still quite keen. We were due to go to Ireland in 2021, so we're looking to go back there. We have some new contacts with some people, the American Association of Concert Bands, and they're planning a big convention in Ireland in 2025. There's possibly we could connect up there. In the meantime, we're doing a lot of stuff at home.
Right.
And there's a couple of big new projects that are kind of underway at the moment. I can't speak about them.
Oh,
or I'll
good.
be killed.
Can you come back when you can?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
I'd like that. Thank you. Lyall McDermott and John Honey, both part of creating Problem Creek, which has resurfaced.